affordability in rural parts of the state. Because I think if we focus only on what does the end user pay for broadband, we're missing a bigger picture. I mean, that is certainly a big part of it, but affordability of broadband is also the affordability of building the broadband infrastructure in places in Minnesota that don't have it. And how do you, even if it gets built, then how do you make it more affordable?
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
I'll let you.
So, we, I don't think as a committee have had a chance to fully finalize as a group all of the voices and perspectives that we want. I don't know if Shannon, you had a chance to see mine.
I did, yeah, and so I think Sally Feinday might be a really interesting person to come in and talk about affordability from the tribal perspective. We haven't done a lot of tribal stuff. My only concern is that there is precious little broadband on the reservation right now, is my perception.
Well, it was so a couple of things, and we haven't had a chance as a committee to digest all this, but I think it is important to set a baseline that the task force here and understand what was the term you said, used about incentive initiatives, or affordability initiatives that the provider said. That's absolutely really key. But I think as a task force, what's important there is to understand how big of a piece of the puzzle of the solution that is. So not just what are the programs, but who's using them, how many of, how much of an impact are those proposals, who's participating?
Well, here's the problem.
And then let me just mention, then the other piece of that is, I think what's really important to hear is the voice and experience and perspective of the people for whom those programs are meant to provide assistance. So how easy are they to use? How accessible are they? How confusing are they? How readily, and how much of the need is that meeting? And so I suggested that we hear from somebody like Sally, who's, that's just one example, who's working with those populations, and or, for example, like Matt Gross, who you remember. Matt's the superintendent of a school. Affordability is a huge issue with a strong American Indian percentage of population, meets the income requirements. So what does it look like for people that are working with populations that cannot afford from
So
the
Sally
fund?
Feinday?
Well, that was a suggestion that I made as a speaker, and I also suggested Matt might be a potential speaker. But so I think it's important that we hear not just what's being offered, but is what's being offered in the lifetime program too. Okay, what is it? But then, is it working? Is it meeting the need? How effective is it? And if not, what tweaks or changes might we suggest?
So, my only concern with that, and I want to make sure, I think that's raising a very good point. The company-oriented program, the companies are going to have different levels of comfort at really talking specifics. It's proprietary. Andy, maybe you want to reinforce that it's not just CenturyLink. It's who's using it, how many, having somebody who's actually using the program talk to us. That gets into really difficult areas for the carriers. Clearly it's not enough. No matter how much they're doing, we know it's not filling the gap. There still remains a gap. But I don't
So
want
your concern is that the companies can't just say, here are 4 people who are using the program, because
I think from a comfort level, and Andy might speak better to this than me, but I don't expect that we're going to hear that there are, 7,804 households in Minnesota using this program, and here's their income level, and this is the level they're using. I think that level of metric is probably not available. So I want to make sure that we're not expecting that, because.
But my concern is that is to create the impression for our audience or for the task force here that, well, these programs are in place, and so we have mechanisms that are adequately addressing the affordability issue. And we don't know that.
I don't think we're trying to say that this fills the gap. This is just one option.
So your point would be to have somebody, I like the idea of Sally a lot. Sally's working with a number of people in the perspective of being able to say, you know, for a lot of people, it works really well, or but there's a certain percentage of people that it can be really hard, they're unbanked, or they're whatever, or.
Just from the perspective of a low-income person that cannot afford internet access, what is the full, you know, and
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
how much of a,
Is Sam Brown easy for people, you know,
No, because they do their own thing,
they
right?
do, but they do sometimes speak to because part of what their program does is fill some of the gaps that you're.
I think Sam presented to us.
Yeah.
And I suggested that we
Last time, I mean,
we
they
could go to Sam,
abbreviated.
we could ask them to bring, I mean, they do this a lot, and we know Sam well, all of us do. And he could, we could ask him to invite,
a couple clients.
yes, a client, yes, and talk from their perspective about what would an affordability program look like, what would be accessible to them, and
Or how do we best educate the rent populations about what options are available? I mean, I think
marketing.
Do we have, what about intake specialists? There are, public benefits intake specialists that go through and evaluate what programs are available for people. It seems like they might be able to, a good voice of authority on what they run into when they're trying to match a client with the program.
That's interesting, I don't know.
We have very good luck with the Intercounty Community Council up in our area,
Huh,
but, you know, not trying to give away my whole speech for next time, but what you need to do is really, at the end of the day, you need to find a champion. You need to find somebody within either superintendent schools, or in this case, this lady at the Intercounty thought what we were doing was the slickest, greatest thing ever, and she looked at every one of her clients and said, you need it, you don't need it, you know, and she dragged them kicking and screaming into the 21st century.
You know, so the other idea was that AmeriCorps has this community technology empowerment program, and I think I wasn't here, it was in a meeting, but I think Lisa Peterson,
Yeah.
whoever spoke to us. And, you know, they frontline people who do this interface with low-income people and try to understand and explain what all the
So
low-cost
that could
internet
be-
options are.
that may be even more beneficial, because I guess the only issue with doing only one client and one client's perspective is it's one person's perspective, whereas if you can get someone who's having multiple touches, it gives the task force, I think, just a little more depth of information about affordability. So maybe could we reach out to Lisa and say, could we have, you know, a couple of people come who've been trained in the intake process, who are champions of doing this, who understand using the programs, and then tell us a little bit about how it goes, what the conversations are like, what the challenges are. I mean, does that make sense? I do like that. I mean, I totally get what, I mean, when we talk about, I do think that if we're gonna talk about the Native population, it is really much better if we have Native American people speaking for themselves. So I'm just gonna say that. If possible, that would be much better than having someone else speak on their behalf, if we're gonna include voices in the report. So that's why I do, you know, think that.
we'll reach out to Sally, and she's a good, I think if she's available, that
Yeah.
day, she would be willing to come, right? Denise also thought that we should add, the perspective of K-12 education and how affordability impacts K-12 education. She's gonna maybe reach out to Mark Johnson.
So, and I had suggested Matt in that role.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a former
And that
task
would be-
force member, and I mean, I don't care, but I think that's very important to have the task force hear from
You can
people
do
who
it,
are.
that's where we can have a couple people talk.
Yeah,
about it.
exactly. Well, because I thought maybe we do like a 3-person panel, because, I know the CTO in our school district, we have a one-to-one, iPad initiative, but we're in the Osseo Maple Grove School District, it's huge, and there are certainly money parts of the district, but there are very unmoney parts of the district. And I know that iPad initiative has been very challenging, and
Yeah.
kids fall behind in school, so they then become the next generation of reporters.
Okay, other stuff in there, that's a lot.
Okay.
Do we have a location in mind for audits?
Do you want to go somewhere else? Do you want to, be part of it a little bit to